So I'm aware that we have started to record, and we want to welcome everybody to Lunch and Learn. And we know people will be coming in yet. And one of the things we like to do at the start of Lunch and Learn, and again at the end, is share announcements that are relevant to women, to the community, and to the League of Women Voters. We're hoping that we can see you if you raise your hand. And Toshiba has said during her presentation, she is comfortable with participation and engagement. So if we don't see that you have your hand up, you could just say, Toshiba, and we'll pause and let you jump in.
Yes.
So we are looking now to have anyone who wants to make an announcement of upcoming events. This is your time. Well, one thing I know is that our Cafe Book Club is going to meet. And could I ask Mary Ellen to do a little commercial for the Cafe Book Club on Friday?
Yes, the book we read together is The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. Excellent, excellent, excellent book. And we start at 9:30. The League Cafe starts at 9:30 on Friday. And what else should I say about that?
Well, this time it's unusual, Mary Ellen, that we are actually going to have a face-to-face rather than a virtual.
Oh, yes. Yes, you're right.
We're
going to be meeting.
COVID.
Right. We're going to be meeting at the offices at Summit Place in West Allis, the League of Women Voters offices in the glass patio, I believe. But about our book club, even if you haven't read the book, we always encourage people to come and participate. Just listen, because it's just always worthwhile, and it is an excellent book. So that's all that I can think of to say, but everyone's welcome, of course.
And I will build on that. One of the things that I have loved about the book club is we have really examined equity, racism,
Yep.
white supremacy. Caste was one of our books, and I ended up promoting that book and buying that book for many people. But we have really taken it seriously to learn more and to respect all people and to figure out what does that mean for us? What does that call us to do? So it's been very supportive for people who want to check out ideas and be inspired and motivated. So it's something to consider.
Right.
And if I'm right, we alternate. 1 week is more open-ended discussion. So if you miss one of the months, you could still say, hey, you know that book, I finally finished it. Does anyone want to build on what I was thinking about?
Right, that's right. Every other month we have book club. So the in-between is to continue the discussion if we'd like, and share new ideas too. So yeah, you're right. If you haven't read it this Friday, the next time that League Cafe meets, we're probably still going to be talking about it. So.
That sounds good. Are there any other announcements? So
I have some.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Peggy. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I joined when you were mid-sentence or near the end of your sentence asking for announcements. So I wasn't quite sure that's what you had asked for. On July 25th, Sunday, July 25th at 2:00 is a new member orientation that members and non-members are welcome to attend, but it's a good way to get an overview of everything the league is involved in and how you might want to become involved. And on August 26th, which is Women's Equality Day, we're having our annual kickoff event, which will be an outdoor event at Greenfield Park this time around, sort of a potluck kind of thing. And information on these events will be in the update, which you can subscribe to on our website, even if you're not a member, and also on the calendar, which is on the homepage. Thanks.
And Peggy is the president of our league. She's been doing it for 3 years, and has quite a challenge during all the elections and the centennial events and then COVID and trying to figure out how to make things work. So thanks, Peggy, for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Is there any other participant who would like to make an announcement? I'm trying to be patient with that wait time concept. So why don't we do a quick, just call out your name, and then we're going to introduce Toshiba, and then we're going to get into why she is passionate about Black Youth Matter and passionate about education. Bernadette, do you want to start?
Yeah, so Bernadette Sweeter from Milwaukee. What drew me and attracted me to this topic is that I serve as the Actuarial Foundation's Milwaukee Math Motivators Coordinator. So what I do in the city is deliver and plan to deliver volunteer math tutoring to our underserved and underprivileged audiences. So we are now in 3 Milwaukee schools. Milwaukee College Prep, however, is one of the schools who we partner with, and they have 4 campuses and 2,000 scholars. So as a person who is facilitating this math delivery, I found myself as a white baby boomer, really not feeling as aligned as I'd like to be with the hearts and minds and souls of my audience, of my middle schoolers and high schoolers. And so I am strongly committed to enabling that next generation. And so I'm glad that I get to hear Dr. Adams and the alignment between education and servant leadership and our community is really important to me. So that's why I'm here.
And I'm happy to know you now, Bernadette. Thanks for introducing yourself.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
Next.
Can I interject real quick, Patricia?
Absolutely.
Because that was kind of that was going to be my icebreaker. Bernadette just kind of started off by introducing herself and explaining why this topic matters to her. So maybe as other participants introduce themselves, we could just kind of jump into that, because that was going to be my icebreaker anyway. So thank you, Bernadette, for helping me, to facilitate that part of my, not a presentation, but discussion. So if everyone else is open to that, I'm taking notes, and I'm really interested to hear about you and why this topic is, even if it's not important, why are you interested? You're here for a reason. So why are you here? So thank you.
Well, Peggy, you've made an announcement, but do you want to jump in?
Sure. Because I also, outside of league, I tutor math at an MPS school, elementary level, though, Bernadette, I'm not. That's as far as I go. But I see how if you are missing a good foundation in education, you're in trouble the rest of the way through. And so it's very rewarding volunteer work that I do with that. What a difference a half hour with a student can make one-on-one,
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen?
Mary Ellen Spacuzza. I don't know how long I've been with the league, but the league has broken open for me so much about, I don't know, about how our country was founded, and it's just been an intellectual gold mine for me to be involved with the League of Women Voters. I really feel much more connected as a voter, much more educated as a voter, and a better citizen, really, overall. So I just have a great interest in seeing our country become more equitable, definitely. And I agree with Brian Stevenson that unless we face our past and honestly look at how our country was formed, we're not going to survive. I mean, I believe he's right. He's an inspiration to me too, even before I joined the league. So I retired from Marquette University. I was in international education before I retired, but that's it.
Thank you. That's a lot. Thank you, Mary.
And then Mary Gleason, can you unmute? And Liddy, you can get ready to unmute.
Hi, I'm Mary Gleason. I'm new to Women League of Voters. However, I will add that my mother was a dedicated member in the 50s and 60s. So following in her footsteps. I'm here because of all the interesting things the League does, also because the kinds of things that are talked about are relevant to me. I was a social worker for many, many years and had to quit working when COVID started because I couldn't be doing home visits anymore. So I want to continue to be aware and updated and involved in whatever way I can. You know, having had many meaningful relationships with kids in the central city and citywide. I guess I will also say the last job I did was kinship, and I'll do a little commercial for kinship because they don't have any money to advertise, but I think it's an important thing to know. Kinship is now, I think, in a number of states. I think Wisconsin was one of the very first, and it's a program for relatives taking care of minor children. If there's a real reason, if the parents are unavailable, unable, anyone of any income, any part of the city can sign up to see if they're eligible for kinship. And then there's a monthly payment of about, I don't know what it is now, 250 something dollars for each child, which certainly really helped the grandmas and the aunts that I was seeing take care of kids whose parents were unable, unavailable, not due to their own choice. In other words, if the parent decided to go away to college or join the military, that wasn't that wouldn't qualify you. But if they were incarcerated or having mental health or drug and alcohol issues, those kinds of things, and one of the relatives took over, then they might be available for these payments. And there is, in the Milwaukee County, there is no limit. In the other counties of the state, there are limits to how many people can avail themselves of kinship, but Milwaukee County is wide open. So feel free to look up the kinship program because they are really always trying to find ways to contact the community. Thanks.
You, Mary.
Thank you.
And on my screen, the next three people I see are Liddy, Joyce, and Sherry. Liddy, you're up. And can you unmute yourself? Great.
Okay, I'm up. Hi there. My
Hi.
involvement with the league is just a history to make sure our community stays abreast of what's going on in the voting world. I am a retiree of MATC 43 years.
Wow.
Channel 10, Black Nouveau. I named the show. It's still
Oh,
on.
cool.
Wow.
I'm a member of Wisconsin Black Media Association. We're dealing with the equity, all that right now. I'm past president of that. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority
Okay.
and the graduate advisor for the undergrad chapter at UWM. And I've been a crisis worker over 15 years, and I'm working Running Rebels as a crisis worker.
Fabulous.
So youth,
Your heart.
that's passing on,
Mhm.
keeping the knowledge,
Yeah.
keeping the knowledge going.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Joyce and then Sherry.
Hi, I'm Joyce Cable. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, went to Milwaukee Public Schools and UWM, and then I taught in MPS, special ed teacher and a number of different schools. And then a Montessori teacher, ended up at Craig Montessori, which I've then volunteered there, yikes, since I retired, as well as High School of the Arts, where my son went to high school, which was interesting. I am on the board of MICA. I go to the UU Church West out just over the line in Brookfield and interested always in what's happening in education and with the city ever since I marched with Father Grappi as a teenager. Thank you. And I'm here because Pat invited me and we're old friends.
Thank you, Joyce.
Sherry?
Hello, you all put me to shame. I'm just a nothing, nobody.
Oh, no, no.
Anyway, the reason I'm here is I love to learn. I love these lunch and learns, and so that's why I'm here. I've got nothing else to say.
Oh.
Sherry, when the spirit moves you, please share.
Okay.
Thank you, Sherry. And Patricia, again, I can't see everyone, so you can kind of facilitate from your end.
I will. Thanks. So let me tell you about Toshiba. She's been my friend for 15 years. I had the messy desk next to hers. Hers was always tidy. Mine was always littered with paper and things, and eventually she got her own microwave. But it was such a pleasure to have Toshiba join the faculty, and right away we could see her leadership qualities. And then eventually, in addition to teaching, we elected her to be the chair of the early childhood department. And we also were happy to see her go into professional development at MATC to help the new faculty, to welcome them. And with the tenured and older faculty, she helped us come up to speed with technology. She has been a teacher at UWM, and she's been a teacher at Whitewater. And I think she's probably done more too in the community in so many ways. Toshiba comes from a family that every kid wishes they grew up in. I've met her folks. They're wonderful people. She loves all her cousins, loves her siblings. They all love her. And she was smart. She picked a really great guy for her husband, Vince. And her two kids are wonderful to watch. And we've been watching them for 15 years. And she is giving to her kids the kind of foundation that we wish every kid got, you know, in the United States. But given that, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about what motivated her. She was a child care provider in a family program that she and her mom worked together on. And then, as you can see, she went on and got her PhD. So it was just constant and continual learning. I believe she's also finishing her book. So Toshiba, why don't you tell us a little bit more? I told her last night, I'm happy to hear she's not waking up in the middle of the night and editing her PhD dissertation.
No, I'm not doing that anymore. Thank you, Patricia, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to spend this time with you and the members of this fine organization. So Black Youth Matter. And so I was interested in hearing why this topic was interesting to all of you. So I'll kind of share why this topic is very interesting to me as I talk throughout this discussion. And I don't want it to be seen or perceived as a presentation. This is a discussion. So let's just have a discussion, dialogue back and forth. But, you know, a time or two, I might get a little choked up because this topic is very personal to me and my family. So again, thank you for allowing me to be in your space today. So I'm gonna see, oh, it's allowing me to share my screen, but it's not allowing me to advance my present. Oh, here we go. I had to do something funky there. So today's topic, so while this is, it's a very important topic, right? And for me, it's important because I am a woman of color. I am a Black woman. I am married to a Black man who is, as Patricia was just talking about, just quite handsome, by the way. And together we have 2 Black children. And so my daughter Ariel is 22. She is an entrepreneur. She is running a t-shirt printing business out of our rec room. So if the doorbell ring, please excuse that, but people are picking up their t-shirt orders because of the game tonight. So if the doorbell ring, I apologize, and I might even have to go answer it and give them their package. Hopefully I won't
Please
have
do, please do.
So that's what she does. And my son, he's 24 years old. His name is Isaiah, equally as handsome as his father. And he is a civil engineer and he works for Kapoor Engineering Company. And so collectively, my husband and I think that we would like to think that we did provide our kids with a good foundation. They're respectable young children. They work hard. They're motivated. All of those things and characteristics that society say children and people are supposed to have. We worked really hard to instill that in them. And yet here we are today having a discussion titled Black Youth Matter, right? I would hope that by this point or this juncture in our country's history, this would not even have to be a topic, right? It's a no-brainer. Of course, Black youth matter. But the fact that we still have to talk about it and have discussions about it and it has to be a headline, while I'm excited to talk about it and excited to share information with people, I also feel it's kind of troubling that we have to talk about why Black youth matter. And then we have people who will kind of counter that and they'll say, well, all youth matter, or, all lives matter. And I agree with that. All lives do matter, but I also agree based on our history and the foundation of our country, some lives have always mattered a little bit more than other lives. And so until we come to the point to where it's a very equitable society to live in, which we have not made it there yet. We have made some progress, but we still have a long way to go. I'll continue to talk and to tout about why we need to make sure that we're paying attention to all children, but especially Black and brown children, because we see with the statistics that they are somehow left behind in our system and they continue to be left behind in our system. So that's why this topic is interesting to me. Specifically though, because I am a mom of a Black male, it's a little bit more personal to me because I see his encounters like with the police, right? With the police department, police officers. And as a mom, it's really troubling. So I'll just share a story with you. This was our first encounter, right? So again, like I'm talking, and I'm not trying to brag about what my husband and I have done for our children. We just thought we were following the rules. And this is what society said we were supposed to do. So we reared our kids well, and you're supposed to be the mom and the dad in this whole utopian type of environment. So we did that. We moved to the suburbs because we were told that those were the good schools. Those were the good schools supposedly in the suburbs, which I kind of beg to differ on that. So we moved to the suburbs, put our kids in a suburban school environment, suburban neighborhoods, safe. We're doing all the right things, right? So at 16 years old, of course, we get our kids a car so that they can, go to basketball games, football games, and things of that nature. And so that's what my son and his friends were attempting to do. And this is the story as he told it to me when he came home. And again, 16, very dark complexion like his mom, 6'1". So he's, doesn't have the cute little baby face anymore. He's looking kind of like a young man now, right? And so he comes home and I always wait up for them. So I'm kind of like in the bed reading or doing something. And he comes to the foot of my bed and he has one tear just streaming down his face. And so I'm like, okay, let me, I can't overreact. Isaiah, what's going on? So he explained to me, and we've lived in this environment and he's attended this suburban school since kindergarten. So he's, walked this environment, rode his bike in this environment, and now he's driving a car in this environment. So they're getting ready to go to the football game or basketball game. And so he goes into the subdivision that adjoins our subdivision to pick up his friends. And so he goes to the house and he decides, well, they had company. So he's trying to be polite and respectful. And so he didn't go into the driveway. He figured he would just kind of sit on the street, so that people can come in and out and he's not in the way. And I don't know, my kids dressed like normal teenagers at that time, I thought. So he's wearing jeans and a hoodie. He's going to a basketball game or some kind of game. He had his hat kind of backward, Jordans or some kind of sneakers, I can't remember. And he's sitting in his car. And he tells me that a couple, like a man and a woman, a white a couple kind of walked past his house, his car, and he saw it. And they walked past his car again. They started kind of looking inside of the car, and then they walked back again. And he's just waiting for his friend. So he's like, well, I didn't think anything of it. He said within minutes, not one, not two, but 3 police cars came and kind of cornered him in and started, they told him, you know, we need you to get out the car. He's asking why, but he knows, you know, to hold his hands up and just go ahead and obey. And he said, and the police officer said, well, we received a phone call and they said that you looked like you were up to no good, like you were going to do something in this neighborhood. And he's like, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm sitting in a car waiting for my friends to come outside. And so they did a check, and sure enough, they saw that he lived in the subdivision. He was not a threat to anyone. He wasn't up to no good. And so they let him go. But it hurt him. It broke his heart. And listening to it as his mom, it broke my heart too, right? So he's explaining the story, and I'm trying to be calm. And he says, Mom, I think I hate white people. And that was like one of the most devastating moments in my life, because I have a lot of white friends who are kind and loving people. And I didn't want my son to have those kind of feelings. And so I tried to explain to him, this is an isolated situation. We can't judge all people. We don't want to be judged. But then it kept happening over and over and over again. And so between the age of 16 to 24, he did get 2 tickets out of it for speeding. But the other times he would just be pulled over. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Why are you here? What business do you have here? And so being a mom of children who experience those type of dilemmas, how could Black youth not matter to me, right? It's personal. So I share that story because it's personal to me. It's personal to my family, that we move beyond just this whole cliche, all lives matter and all youth matter, to understanding that some lives have been left out of the equation. And we need to do a better job at making sure that we honor and respect everyone. So that kind of leads me into talking a little bit about our current dilemma, the way I see the current dilemma within society as a whole, but also within our educational system, right? So that happened to my son at 16. But these type of incidents happen to Black and brown children on a regular basis, starting in preschool and probably before preschool, but I have statistics that starts us at preschool, where they're mistreated and just not treated in an equitable, fair, kind, and loving way. So some of the statistics talks about how Black and brown children, or Black and Latinx children in school environments are closely watched and closely scrutinized. There was a study that was done by Dr. Gilliam and his associates that showed how, so they recorded white teachers in a preschool environment. And what they saw is that although the white children and the Black children and the brown children were doing the same stuff, they were all kind of being kids, right? Naturally just being kids, maybe hitting or licking their tongue out, whatever, but some people consider misbehaving. Yes. Oh, I thought Patricia had her hand up. So they were all doing the same thing, but when they all sat back and watched the video recording, they were amazed to see that they were singling out the Black and the brown children and not the white children, even though they were all doing the same thing. And this was in 2016. This wasn't in 1970 something or before, 1964 civil rights. This was a couple years ago that this study was done. So it's showing that Black and brown children are closely watched and scrutinized. And I'll talk a little bit about why I believe this happens. It shows that Black and brown children are suspended and expelled 3.6 times more than white children in preschool. We're not even in elementary school, middle school, high school, babies, right? I have an early education background, so I'm still looking at this like, these are babies. How does a 3-year-old get expelled, like permanently kicked out of a classroom environment, an educational institution? And what's interesting is that even though they only amount to, like Black and brown children only equate or amount to 19% of the enrollment in early education environments, 47% of the suspensions are allocated to that racial group. So 19% of enrollment of Black and brown children, but 47% of the suspensions are allocated to that racial population in early education environments. We see that Black and brown children are recipients of harsher punishment, where they are, again, exhibiting the same types of behaviors as their white counterparts, but they are more harshly punished for their misbehavior, so to speak. We also see in the studies or the statistics that show that teachers typically underestimate the ability of Black and brown children, right? They coddle them, or they believe that they just don't have the intellectual capacity to do well in school. And we have some theories in the field of education that talks about this. It talks about how Black and brown children are just not genetically capable of learning and excelling at the same rate as their white counterparts. And many of us know that that's just so not true, right? And again, I'll talk about some of the ways or some of the reasons that we see these equity gaps within our education environments. More statistics, more troubling statistics, what I consider to be very troubling and heartbreaking, is that while we have these statistics and we see that Black and brown children are not treated equitably in these learning environments, 54% of children now in the US in 2021 are coming from diverse backgrounds, right? Racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity, linguistic diversity. So we have a whole melting pot in the United States, right? And this melting pot of children are coming into our early education environments, yet we're finding that teachers are just not ready for them for whatever reason. Like, and why do you have to be ready for diversity, right? If you're a teacher and you're there to respond to and to provide educational experiences to all children. But we're seeing that teachers are just not ready for all of this diversity that's coming in, and that they're really treating children based on their own personal biases, what they think children are capable of doing, not understanding or getting to know them to see what they're capable of doing, and also kind of working through this lens of racialized stereotypes, right? So we see all of these racial inequities, which kind of present a lot of different opportunity gaps within our system. And that leads to achievement gaps, where we see that white children are excelling more academically within the educational environment. And again, it's not genetics. It's not that white children are smarter or anything. It's not magical for them. What we find in the research is that the teachers cater to them more. They provide them with more opportunities. They provide white children with more experiences. And then you're seeing that the Black and brown children are excluded from particular opportunities that are necessary for their own growth and development as well. So these achievement gaps, so to speak, that are published, they want us to believe that one racial group of children is better than the other. And that's not true, because from my background in early childhood education, the theories teach me that all children are born with the capacity to learn. It doesn't say white children are born with a better capacity than Black children or Asian children or Hispanic children. All children are wired with the brain capacity to learn. It's up to us as their caregivers and parents and society members to provide them with equitable opportunities so that they can thrive in those environments. So as troubling as this information is, it's like, but those of us who have been around a while, it's like, well, this isn't new. Where did this come from? Why do we have this perception that Black and brown children are just less than or not good enough, or should be surveyed more or watched and scrutinized more? Well, I would argue that it's embedded within the historical roots of our country, who we are as a country, right? If you want to understand what's happening today in our society, in our educational system, I think Peggy kind of talked about this a little bit in her introduction, or maybe it was Mary, I kind of took notes. We have to look back in our history. Like, how did we get here? Like, who tolerates this type of ill behavior for so long, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how did we get here? How did we get to a point in our society where we start to look at different racial groups of people as different people? when we're all really part of the human race, right? So, so it goes back to this whole racial categorization of people, right? So we're all a human race. So how did I become African-American and Patricia become white, and our friend Chua who works with us, how does she become Asian? Where did all these labels come from, right? So Ami and Wine, it talks about these racial categories, and they talk about the purpose of racial categories, right? We're not labeled as Black, white, Asian, Hispanic for no reason. We receive these labels because it helps to satisfy the hierarchy, the racial hierarchy of our society, right? So it helps to satisfy, and it helps to instill white supremacy, right? That the white man, and I don't even want to say white women, because intersectionality theory talks about how even white women are oppressed within our system, right? But lucky maybe for white women, you're going to receive more advantages than I do as a Black woman, but you're not going to be as advantaged as a white man. So we're giving these racial categories so that we can understand that white people are the sovereign people, and these are the group of people that we all are supposed to be like. And that's what my husband and I were doing. We were trying to be like this model family that society has prescribed for us to be. And I don't know if you can tell in my voice, but I'm kind of getting a little tired of it, right? I don't want to be the person and the family that society says I'm supposed to be. I want to be the person and the family member that my family and I choose that we want to be. So I'm starting to kind of break these barriers down and say, you know what? I'm not going to be doing this nonsense anymore. I'm going to wear my kinky natural hair. I'm not going to straighten it anymore so that I can look like a certain type of person. And that's how I started to raise my children. Be who you are. And be, if you're happy, if you're emotionally happy, if your emotional intelligence is good for me, I will go to bat for you. And I will allow you to be whoever you want it to be. Like my daughter, she's in this whole like genderless thing. And so she does not like to be called a girl. She's like, I'm just a person, don't label me. And I'm like, oh, that's my child. You know how I'm proud, right? I'm like, yes, that's what we have to do. So anyway, so these racial categories is what makes us help to instill and perpetuate white supremacy. So we got to break down these racial categories. We look at each other as people. We're human. We're part of the human race. And then we can look, even date it back to slavery, if you're looking at like how this whole division of people was manifested for so many years. And we're still kind of living within that era, so to speak now. Like, for example, during slavery, I mean, Black people were nothing, right? Black people were relegated to the lowest ranks of society. Black women were raped and physically abused. They had children by their slave owners, and then the children of the slave owners were also raped and put into the system, or maybe because they were a lighter complexion, they were able to come into the house and do work, but it was still a system of oppression to where Black women were just really mistreated. And during that era, that's where this whole stereotype of Black women being promiscuous and over-sexualized, and our bodies our bodies being over-sexualized and just utilized for the pleasure of a white man. And it didn't just stop with Black women, Black men, during slavery, they were beaten to a pulp because they were stereotyped as these like supernatural beings. They were like beast-like people, like how are you so big and how do you look that way? Well, in order to control you, we have to oppress you. We have to be superior over you. And so all of these racial stereotypes came about. Like, so I'm sure that's why my son has been pulled over by the police or mistreated, because he's a tall, dark-skinned man, right? He's a threat. He's a threat to society. He's up to no good. That's just a stereotype of Black boys and Black girls. They're fast tail, you know, they don't take education in their lives serious, right? These are all misconceptions and misnomers. Like, my kids are none of that, right? I have cousins and relatives. I'm in the Black community all the time. I don't see all of these stereotypes perpetuated. the way that society says that they are. But people believe it. I don't believe it, but certain people believe it. And that's why those statistics on the previous slide are manifested today. That's why young Black children are racialized within their environments and mistreated or suspended and things of that nature, because of these stereotypes that were brought about or manifested during slavery are continuing to be perpetuated today. And in order for white supremacy to be long lasting, we have to believe that. You have to believe that my son is a threat to you. You have to believe that he's a beast-like person. So that way you won't try to get to know him, right? If you're his teacher and you believe that, you're not going to give him those opportunities because you're afraid of him. You're believing the stereotypes. And so that's our historical roots. That's the foundation of our country. And as we know, a foundation in a building, any type of foundation, the purpose of the foundation is to ensure that everything that comes behind it is manifested that same way. So you build the foundation and then you manifest your belief system based on that foundation. And so that's why we are able to have this whole system to where even today is my belief that whiteness is honored and whiteness is celebrated. And so many people try to follow that norm, or what Bourdieu calls the habitus. They try to act a certain way so that you can be regarded a certain way in society, because just being Black alone is just not good enough. That's not gonna get me where I need to be. So we have all these systems that include white children, but these same systems are built to exclude any other type of child, any child of color. And so we call it inequity or inequalities, but really it's racism, right? It's racism. And then you see these levels of intersectionality when not only are people oppressed based on their race, they're oppressed based on their gender, they're oppressed based on their sexual orientation, they're oppressed based on their social economic status, right? So all of these different isms and all of these different categories, right, that society has placed upon us, it just seems to oppress certain groups of people. So I'm going to kind of stop. Before I keep going, are there any questions or any feedback or comments or anything of that nature at this point?
And we're going to ask you, since we're sharing the screen, to just unmute yourself and say Toshiba or Dr. Adams.
No, Toshiba's fine.
Okay.
Well, Toshiba, I just wanted to say that part of me is not hopeful, because I do believe our country was built this way, and that's why it continues to run this way. It's almost like a machine. I've said this before, a machine. And it was built on exploiting labor. People came over here, you know, before there was even a government, to exploit what they could, take what they could. And that meant, you know, pushing the native people off their land, because there were no laws when they first started here. There were, you know, they were coming over here, it was wide open, and they kind of could do what they wanted, and they exploited the resources, they exploited the people. Then chattel slavery, you know, was just a bonus, you know, in terms of making money, you know, on the backs of other people. So part of me gets discouraged, because I feel that if we're built this way, how the hell do we get out of this? I mean, Brian Stevenson says we need reconciliation. You know, we need to face it. We need to, you know, reconcile with our past and admit to it.
Right.
But I'm still kind of worried that we're just, how do we do this? You know, people say Black Lives Matter, and I get it, but there's so many people that get offended. They go, oh, all lives matter. It's like, well, you know, they don't don't they get it? You know, I get discouraged. So, I mean, that's not a very hopeful thing to say, but, you know, I think that it's the haves and have-nots are getting so far apart, and the group of have-nots is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Heather McGee talks about the fact that this is hurting, the way things are built is finally starting to hurt white people. You know, that's an oversimplification, but what do you do with this huge group of people that are have-nots, you know, and are being exploited by a smaller and smaller group of having everything? They have everything. So anyway, I don't know what that means. I'm
Yeah,
just
no.
throwing it out there.
I completely agree with you. I'm not always an optimist either. And, you know, I talked to my husband and he says to me like, well, why are you doing this? Like, why are you racking your brain? Why are you writing articles? And why are you trying to write a book about these incidents or these topics? And we don't see change. And so I have to believe that, and I know, I mean, it's not just that I believe, we have seen change. We have seen progress over the years with the Civil Rights Act and with other policies that have been implemented. But like you said, a lot of people are advantaged based on the oppression and disadvantage of others. And
Right.
until that group of people stop being selfish and not just think about them and their own families and start thinking about society as a whole. Because I think that if we think about society as a whole and we create a better world for people, then that's gonna benefit all of us, right? Not just a few of us. And I've always said that, like this division is just really crazy. It's like white people could work with Black people and we can have a better and more brilliant society for everyone, and Asian people and Hispanic people, not trying to leave anyone out. But some people are intimidated by that and they would prefer to have the power. It's power. It's, you know, like it's this whole power fixation. I think that some people cannot give up the power. They cannot, it's called hoarding resources, right? And we see that in our school system, right? How resources are hoarded and they're given to certain groups of children, right? And we all know the value of resources, the value of knowing about grant information, the value of knowing about AP classes in high school and how that's going to help you matriculate more seamlessly into college, the value of having social connections, right? Having people who have social capital, who can share information with you that's going to allow you to navigate the education and the school system and society as a whole. Resources are powerful, but there's certain people who like to hoard them for themselves. And then they'll say, well, look at those Black kids or look at those Hispanic kids. They're not doing well. They're not motivated. They don't care. It's not that they don't care, it's that they've had so many doors slammed in their face over and over again. They don't know how to open the doors to those resources. And sometimes their parents don't know how to do that either. They may not be as savvy as another group of parents. And so these resources continue to get hoarded to a certain population, more predominantly hoarded to a certain population of children. And then they're taught this same type of behavior. Keep these resources, don't share the resources. So, right, how do we break down this whole system of white supremacy? It's huge, it's ugly. And I just feel like we just have to chisel it down as much as possible. And even like this audience, like I listened to your introductions and who you are and what you do, you all are already, you know this stuff already. You know, you don't really need me to talk to you about my experiences and this, you already know, but the problem is the people who don't know won't come and hear about it, or they don't want to hear about it because they don't want to change. Oh, if I hear about it, then does that mean I need to act on it? Well, I don't even want to act on it, so I don't want to hear about it. So again, using this whole colorblind racism, colorblind perspective, oh, this stuff doesn't exist. If you can pretend like it doesn't exist, if you can pretend like the statistics that I shared don't exist, then you have an excuse to not do anything about it, to not change who you are, or to try to help the system. Did a hand go up or someone else was trying to jump in?
I'm trying to scan.
Mary Gleason.
Let me make sure I'm okay. This is just what pops into my head. 40 years ago, before I was a social worker in the community, I just worked at an agency. My friend, my Latinx friend who was working at the agency had us do an activity. And she sat us all in a circle and gave us each a 11x7 piece of paper. And she said, okay, for every basically negative that I'm saying to you, rip off a piece of the paper. And the piece of paper is the child before they go to school in the morning. And she said, okay, rip off a piece of paper for the child didn't get enough to eat yesterday. Rip off a piece of paper for there was gunfire in the middle of the night, so the child didn't sleep well. Rip off another piece of paper because the child doesn't know if they're going to have 3 meals the next day. Rip off another piece of paper if there's fighting going on in the house in the middle of the night. And she just went on and on and on. And I always felt like out of everything I learned, that was the most important thing, because then here's the child with not much of a piece of paper going to school in the morning. And then what do you expect out of them in a classroom when they're coming in with such a deficit? So it isn't that kids aren't capable, it's because of the inequity creates, particularly in Milwaukee, the division of neighborhoods by race, the lack of opportunities, the lack of communication. But that was so impactful to me. So I guess what I would say is feeling that very early in my career, feeling things as a white person really made a difference. And especially, like I said, in the city of Milwaukee, now that I'm not a social worker, I really don't go to any of the places that I spent my day in. I don't see any of the women that I had made friends with. So there is such a divide, and it's on such a basic core level. So I guess what I would say is maybe we need to do more feeling-based things so that white people can experience it, can feel it, can understand where things are coming from, especially in a classroom, especially for teachers.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it has to be on a personal level, these connections on a connectivity level, but it also has to be from a policy, a structural level. We need structural change because you're kind and you're caring and you're going to go into the school system and you're going to help to provide only a certain handful of kids with this really positive experience. But what about the rest of them, right? The system has to be broken down. The barriers have to be torn down in order for all of the children to receive that type of love and connectivity that you're explaining. When you're talking about the division in the city of Milwaukee, we know that our city is like what, #1. I think we've elevated to #1, right? As far as like racial division by zip code and by race and social economic status. And then where you see the highest poverty is where you see the highest population of children and families of color. And in those areas, it's like a food desert, right? Where are the grocery stores? Where are the syndics? Where are the Myers and things of that nature? They don't exist. If you drive through the inner city, you're not going to find these healthy options for young children and their families to eat. So a lot of the families, because of their poverty level, they use the transit system. So they have to get on the bus and, find a pick and save in Wauwatosa or on the east side or something of that nature. So again, hoarding resources. Where are the health clinics in those neighborhoods where these kids can go and get their checkups and vaccinations and COVID tests and things of that nature? It's like the disparities are so obvious if you just look. I mean, if you just talk to people and if you look, you can see the disparities. But in the suburb that I lived in we had a choice. Do you want to go a mile this way to Pick and Save or a mile that way to Myers? Or do you want to go a mile that way to Syndics or a mile that way to the outdoor food market? they're plentiful, right? There's so many different opportunities. The school system is different, right? So, and the resources that are provided in different schools. Well, if schools are like, you know, now I won't say predominantly based on property taxes. Well, if it's an inner city neighborhood, the property taxes are low. So that's less money going into that school system versus Brookfield or Wauwatosa or, you know, other suburban areas where the housing market is $450,000, you know, on average. Well, that's a lot more money going into those systems, those school systems, and it's providing those children with a lot more resources and opportunities. So the disparities are just all over the place. It's just mind-boggling to me to hear people say, I don't see it. I'm like, well, do you look at the news? Do you read the paper? Do you talk to people? Like, what bubble are you living in to where you don't see these types of disparities? So yes, I completely agree with you. I said all that to say I agree with you.
Let me give you a shocker to some people. Sometimes you will feel it. This past weekend, I moved to the east side where all the resources are, and we know it. A young man, we were watching the people with the little glider things, and this young man fell off his bike on the hill that goes down the Collectivo. Hurt his knee, and everybody crowded around him. And somebody called 911. And there was a white guy. He called 911. They put him on hold. He went into shock. I said, "Oh, really? Are you shocked?" And then it took a while for them to get there. They were so surprised. I said, "Hello, welcome to the world."
Welcome to our world. Right. Yeah. It's
Toshiba, could you stop sharing screen so we can see all the faces?
oh yeah, sure. Of course I can.
Oh, great.
Oh, aren't you guys beautiful? Okay, well, I had more to cover, but I mean, I think we can just kind of stop because we're just kind of having a discussion now. I don't have to kind of keep going through the slides, but I was kind of wanting to, okay, so this is where we are. This is how we got here. I mean, I can't make it up. I just research. That's what I do. I research, I find the data, I find the statistics, and I'm like, well, this is how it has been historically. And again, you can blame the child, you can blame their racial background, their family background, they're not motivated, blah, 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 blah. It's none of that. I work with Black people all the time. I just think it's the stereotypes that people cannot let go of these stereotypes. Like when I meet people, like some of my white colleagues, and they try to make me different than Black people. I'm like, no, but you're educated. Oh no, look at how you talk. I'm like, I'm talking like this because I'm with y'all. Like when I go to talk to my family, it's a whole different vernacular, right? So people of color, you guys, people of color, we wear so many hats. We're so many different people. We're bipolar. We have to be bipolar to exist and survive in white America, right? I have to
Code
talk
switching.
Code switching. Yeah. Because otherwise you guys will be like, oh, look at her broken English. We're not going to listen to her. But if I talk like this, then maybe you'll listen to me. But I tell you, if I go talk to my kids, it's totally, you know, it's like, what y'all doing? What y'all talking about? You know, so we code switch. We have to switch it up all the time. And so that's another issue in school, right? When you're talking about, well, why kids can't be successful. Some of the children in these school environments, they have to be so many different people to appease the system. Where some white children, I mean, it's seamless for them. They leave home and they go straight into a school environment that's similar to their home. Similar norms, similar belief systems, similar attitudes, similar vernacular, right? And that's not always the case for your Black and brown kids, right? It's not as seamless. They have to come to school and, okay, in the hallway, I can be Black, but in the classroom, I have to act white. That's what they call it. We have to act white. And like, how foul is that you have to act like something that you're not in order to be successful? That causes a lot of stress and a lot of turmoil and a lot of emotional and cognitive stress for children. So they're stressed out, but we want them to excel academically and we want them to behave. And, you know, we expect so much out of them and we give so little to them, I think we give so little to them. We judge them, we stereotype them. but we want them to excel in our environments. And one of like my slides was just a slide of former President Obama when he was just talking about the change starts with us. We can't give up. We have to keep advocating. I don't even feel like I advocate anymore. I feel like I'm begging. I'm begging, please, please give these kids an opportunity. Please see the good in them. Please try to have some kind of social connection with them. Don't judge them because their pants are sagging a little bit. That's a fad. That's a style. They're not trying to be disrespectful. Their pants sagging has nothing to do with their cognitive ability. These kids can rap and sing, and they have all types of talent. I feel like every individual, every single child has a talent that they can use to be prosperous with. But we don't look for talent. We tell them to sit in your seat and act like this. Who wants to act the same all the time? And why do I have to act like Patricia? I love Patricia, but I don't want to act like Patricia. Right? I want to act like me. I want to be an individual. And that's what we have to bring out of kids, I believe. If we bring out their individuality, bring out their passion, bring out what they love in school and show them that in that environment so that they can have some kind of connection, I think we'll see a different type of child. And so I'm a big proponent of culturally relevant pedagogy and making sure that our classroom environments are culturally relevant to all children, not just the children that we serve. So if I'm a teacher and all of my children are white, that doesn't mean we're not supposed to be culturally relevant. They have a culture, right? So, and it's not to say that, you know, white people don't have a culture. They do have a culture, but it's just to say that in school systems, so often the only culture that's celebrated is the white man's culture, the white man's holiday, the white man's attitude and behavior. And it's like, well, what about what my family respects, and what about what my family love? Why is that not also celebrated in the school system? And so a culturally relevant perspective talks about how getting to know the children and the families and their culture and their likes and what makes them happy and what they honor, and making sure that you infuse that within the curriculum. Then you're giving all kids an opportunity to connect, because that's what it is. It's a connection, right? So when you go into an environment and you feel comfortable, it's because you're connecting with something in that environment. So we have to make sure that we're providing opportunities through books and poetry and signage on the walls, and getting down to their level and looking at them, and getting to know their parents, and just making sure that what we do every day in our environments is a reflection of not just Milwaukee, not just, you know, Wisconsin, not just the United States, but the world abroad as well, right? We want these children to be global. So we have to provide them with global opportunities. So that's what I believe. And I'm open to any counters to my belief or other ideas. I also think that, I don't know, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about our government, but it's bad. Where's the money, right? Why are we not funding early education and K-12 environments, right? And again, we expect so much from these young people who cognitively, their brains are not even fully established, but we want them to be little adults, right? We're still messed up. I mean, if we just want to be honest, you know, pull your skeletons out of your closet and talk about, you know, your mishaps and things of that nature. We as adults have not even made it. We're still struggling, you know, to figure out who we are in society and how to be successful. But we expect kids to just know it all and to just be perfect little humans. They're not little adults. We have to give them time and room and space to develop within and across all of their developmental domains. And it's, again, I just think it's up to us to provide those opportunities. And if a child is not doing well, it's our fault. How do you blame a kid when we're the people who are rearing them and teaching them and supposed to be providing opportunities to them and for them within our society? So I just think, and again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, because I'm like, well, you all have been doing all this great stuff on all these different committees and math tutoring and running Rebels and Father Grappy, walking with Father Grappy. By the way, my aunt walked with Father Grappy too. I don't know if you know her name, but her name is Dorothy Glisper. She's a pastor. So she used to tell me all these neat stories about walking with Father Grappy and going across the viaducts and how difficult it was. And two of her sons actually got kidnapped. Wow. And they released them a couple days later, but they got kidnapped because as a lesson to her for, you know, how dare you go on that side of town. So Yeah, so my family, we're very woke, I guess, so to speak, and we teach our children to be loving and kind and to respect diversity. Don't judge people. So going back to that incident with my son, we can't judge all white people based on that one scenario. Like, I feel like we just have to work together to make this world a better place for all of us to thrive and be happy. Yeah.
I saw Mary Ellen raise her hand.
Well, I was thinking that Mary Gleason, what the point she was making about, I think what she was trying to, or what she was saying was telling stories is very helpful, isn't it? These personal stories, you do have to get at people through their heart, really, don't you? I mean, that's why art is so helpful, plays and poetry. And yeah, to break this down, we need these stories to tell stories to each other of what's going on.
And
And that's all I want.
and I see Bernadette has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Toshiba. I mean, what you're saying is so impactful, and I'm doing some really deep listening. Oh,
I know, we're like, oh.
well, I tell you what, I'll tell you my story. I am a child of two World War II, post-World War II immigrants. So my parents came to America in the late 50s, along with millions of others after war-torn, scourged earth in Europe. And so I was brought up with being half Polish and half German. And my mother's family was not. They were back in Germany. So these are two individuals in their early 20s at that time who were traumatized by war, by violence, by physical abuse, by whatever, dysfunction in the family. And so we eventually landed, I was the oldest of four, in the south side of Milwaukee, which at that time was blue collar, very working class. Dad worked in a factory, mom was a cleaning lady. And I will tell you that there are tiers of dignity and value in the white community equally. I felt it equally, as if I were half Black and half white. Because to my neighbors, my parents had accents and we were dumb Polacks. So all my life, I wanted to prove that I wasn't dumb. So that does work on a child. It traumatizes a child. I get it. And my father never told his family that he married a Polish woman. So we went to Germany in the early 70s and they found out that my mother was Polish. So, I understand the ugliness of what it takes, of what prejudice and bigotry, but I wasn't Black and I didn't have dark skin. That amps it up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it amps it up to a point that I had a friend from Cuba. Her parents were from Cuba. She was light skinned because she was probably a prodigy of Europeans in Cuba. And other Cuban parents wanted her to marry their sons who were dark skinned to lighten the gene pool. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting experience that I had. I couldn't wrap my head around. There is a fundamental issue with being Black, brown skin, and wanting to lighten that pool up. Okay, so that's what I call this racism, right? Mm-hmm. Now let's then, as I try to think about the poverty in our society, we have a zip code which is the worst economic achievements, I think, in the country, that it's generational. Mm-hmm. How you can't freaking throw money at there's not enough money in the world to fix that. How the hell do you fix that? And I'm really trying to wrap my heart around this, because my heart is truly in it. I'm trying to understand, but incarceration, the minute you get a record. There was a kid at the pool, he was probably 14, a Black kid with an ankle bracelet around him, around his ankle. And I'm thinking, that kid, where's his future? His future 60, 70 years ahead of him. Where is it going to be if at 14 he's already got an ankle bracelet and is being monitored? Because some of this stuff just keeps me up at night. And it keeps me up because I am truly committed to us as a community. So my mindset is, it's much more global than just being in my neighborhood or my block. We all want the same thing. You know, my scholars, their parents want their kids to get the best education. They don't freaking have the money to pay for mathnasium for $50 or $70 an hour that Whitefish Bay parents pay. You know, so how can I, in my little world, help enable one scholar to break free from that family and the chaos and everything to advance that person's life? Because this is my philosophy, it's all economic.
Yeah.
The minute you get a billionaire Bezos who's Black, or a Giannis, trust me, white people will want to hang on to that. They want to hang on to those coattails. So to the extent that those optics continue in our society, enable economic growth and betterment. It's about money. You know, black owned businesses. How cool is that? You know, when you put a leader out there, especially black man, because women, you know, rock the world. Women, our Black women have small businesses and they're rocking it, and they're at the YWCA and they're being showcased. But it's the Black males. Anyway, it's this or that. I started with my story, and then I'm just trying to extrapolate it because now I'm much older, and I left that community, and I got over the trauma of the name calling that I suffered as a child and in high school. And I'm on to now fixing other things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The economic stagnation in certain zip code areas is beyond sad. And I don't know. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'm like, well, what if we create jobs that offered livable wages? It's not that hard. Maybe I'm making it too simplistic, but well, if this Black man was able to go to work, and I'm sorry, I'm an educator, but I don't feel like everyone needs to have several degrees in order to be financially stable. That's just not right, right? Everyone is not going to have the opportunities to go to college. But if you are able to get up and go to work, I feel like you should not have to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. If you work a 40-hour job, you should be paid a wage to where you can take care of your family. The way our system, like in the field of childcare, I love this field, but what man, head of household, can take care of his family making $10, $15 an hour? We need to increase the wages for all of these jobs so that people don't have to revert to criminal behavior, right? Or don't have to revert to living off the system, so to speak. Let them feel proud about going to work and feel proud about doing the work that they do and feel proud about making the money and coming home to take care of their families or help to co-parent and co-take care of their families. We're like rattling our brains over stuff to me that, and maybe I'm just naive, but I just feel like if you pay people more money, pay them their worth, then they can take care of their families and you won't have these whole pockets of poverty based on zip codes, right? I can't see, oh, Sherry. Oh, Sherry, you were the lady who said you had nothing to say.
Well, okay, so I was listening to Bernadette, but one thing that I do, you all work with children. I've worked with homeless people and poor people for over 20 years at the Gathering and at St. Ben's. I'm a weekly volunteer before the pandemic. But anyway, the thing that makes me so sad is I see the same people that I've seen for over 20 years coming in to the meal program and at St. Ben's, the open door. And it gets very discouraging, you know, that you try to help people and I just don't, I don't understand. you think after 20 years, you know, if they're like my age, it's like, why? Are they still coming here? You know, because they don't have any, you know, they're still homeless and looking for a place to live. And it's very sad. And especially right now with Milwaukee counties, you know, they offer a lot of housing options, which really offers a lot of stability, you know, and these are adults. These are not people, you know, they're older adults, not children, people with children usually. But, you know, I just don't understand. And they get an apartment and then a month later they're back. Well, it didn't work out. And it's like, why? You should have tried really hard. You got a place to live finally. So it is discouraging. And I too don't know what the answers are. I always say, I can help you today. I can't change your life, but I can help you today, you know?
When you
So,
talk to some of these individuals, because do you ever ask them why? Why didn't you stay longer than a month? Like what interfered with you staying? Because I know, and I'm not a social worker, but I'm a family member. And I know a lot of my family members who struggle with homelessness and things of that nature are also struggling with drug dependency, alcoholism, struggling with depression because they were molested at 4, 5, 6 years old continuously through the age of 12. So I think if we're like, no, do better, you know, we want them to do better, but it's like, and I'm not saying that some of us don't deal with those same types of issues in our lives too, but I just feel like sometimes if you ask the question, well, what interfered? Why couldn't you stay longer than 30 days? You know, what was calling you away from that? And I just know when I talk to some of my family members, that addiction, I don't know how to describe it because I've never been a person addicted to anything except for life in my family. But to see someone struggle through alcoholism or drug addiction is just heart-wrenching. They want to do better, but it's like they have this monkey on their back that dictates their brain and that dictates their behavior. And I'm not a AODA counselor or anything. Again, I'm just talking about what I see in my own family. And so then we're talking again about resources, like what type of resources, what type of counseling, what type of services can be offered so that people are supported as they try to dig themselves out of whatever situation they're in. And this wasn't rhetorical. I mean, yeah, Sherry, I was just, asking you actually.
Well, that's why I think it's a criminal that we didn't expand Medicaid, right? In our state. Why the heck wouldn't we expand Medicaid? I mean, people need support and some people need more support and more ongoing support and more daily support. And we turned down expanding Medicaid. I cannot understand that. Right.
And so those services help the parents who can then be in a better space, mental, emotional space to support their children, who then will show different levels of success in school. It's just like a trickle effect. And children who are not supported in school go into this world unprepared. And then you see this whole perpetuation, this whole cycle of poverty, this whole cycle of all of these ills of society that some people, this cycle is so hard on them that they just cannot figure out how to stop that wheel and jump off and do something different.
So I'm aware of the time. Peggy, go ahead.
Just want to say I can bring this back. I can bring this back to the league and put on, maybe you think rose-colored glasses, but the league's mission is about empowering voters and defending democracy. Mm-hmm. Change happens at the ballot box. And right. When you get more people sharing their opinions, it affects who gets elected. It affects budgets. Toshiba said, where is the money? That's the big question, right? We have these twin crises of racism and wealth inequality, and how we spend taxpayer dollars can have a big impact on both of those. So I like doing the work of the league because of that mission and because of my hope that when more people are paying attention and more people are voting, change could happen. And I think people who have ultimate power see that too, because we just had a highest voter turnout election and then a rash of voter suppression laws. They know. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Toshiba, and everyone for your thoughtful comments. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you
So
all.
as we wrap it
Thank
up,
you, Toshiba. I mean, it's too bad more people didn't show up, really.
well,
Oh,
we have it recorded
yeah.
and we'll be sharing it. And a number of people did get in touch with me saying, I wish I could be there and I have a conflict. And I said, I hope we can record it, and Toshiba graciously agreed. But let's just do a quick round of gratitude, maybe a takeaway message, and then we'll be ending the meeting. And Toshiba, you know I love you. So I don't have to say much more to you other than the gratitude that you said yes to coming today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So the order I will just call on people is Bernadette, and then Liddy, Mary Ellen, Joyce, Sherry, Peggy already led off,
Mhm.
and Mary Gleason, and Jasmine, if you're able to unmute yourself and jump in, that would be great. So again, back to Bernadette, a word of gratitude.
Yes, really super grateful. And here's what I'm going to take away. Toshiba, I liked what you had to say about looking at a, let's say, a adolescent Black male and seeing baggy pants. My initial reaction, because of the optics, is, oh, and doesn't fit in. And instead of thinking about that person and the capabilities that that person might have, and that's really relevant to me as someone who's now connecting our Black students to their white tutors. I can serve as that change agent and a mentor. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grateful.
Thank you. And if I could just just real quick, like about the baggy pants thing, and I'm happy that Bernadette just talked about, yeah, I'm gonna look at this different. My son, I'll admit, he wore the baggy pants and he is a civil engineer today. So it does not dictate who he is and his future. It's a fad. It's what the kids are doing. I hated it. Bernadette, I was like you, like, oh, would you please stop? He got over it, and went on and did what he needed to do. So thank you for that.
And I will tell you as well, my son did the same thing.
See, there we go.
And I refused to do his washing because his XXL pants were too big. And now he's going for his PhD as well. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Keeping hope alive. Lydia?
Yes. Thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, and make sure you take care of your mental health as you're doing it.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Toshiba. This was great. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for everybody sharing, and especially to get to know you, Toshiba. And
Thank you.
I'll look forward to seeing some of you in the future.
Okay, I like that.
And I already said thank you, and it was wonderful. And thank you to all you ladies, because you're all very inspirational to me. So thank you to everybody.
Peggy already spoke, so back to Mary and then Jasmine. Sorry to do this to you, Mary. Can you unmute?
Thanks, Toshiba. And I don't think any of us look good on Zoom, and you're spectacular on Zoom.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Just have to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just really appreciate hearing your personal story and your perspective. I just think that's so helpful and hopeful. And can I just say one other thing to Liddy in this group? Liddy, I grew up with your husband. His sister was one of my best friends.
Oh, okay.
I've recently connected with him on Facebook, and he's just an adorable human being. Except I think of him as 12 years old. So just say hi from Mary Gleason to Mark.
That's sweet.
That's all.
Jasmine, are you able to join in? Okay, I'm going to say no pressure. Okay, my dear ones, thank you for sharing time together. And next month, I put it in the chat. Lou Sosa is going to talk about now is the time to protect democracy. And Jasmine is coming on, and she's going to be talking about what it was like when her child's father was murdered.
Oh,
One of the things Toshiba didn't even say, and because we agreed it was emotional, is Black men and Black women are also being murdered.
yeah.
So I don't want to end on that negative note, but we will talk about trauma and resources and what does it take to heal a family.
Yeah.
So dear ones, stay strong, one step at a time, forward together, no steps back.
Right. Thank you all. It was a pleasure being here. Pleasure seeing all of your beautiful faces. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Toshiba.
You're welcome, Patricia.
Thanks, Pat.
A pleasure, Mary. I'm glad we recorded.